Today I'm going to be sharing with you one simple practice to make decision making easy. Have you ever found yourself paralyzed by opportunities or crippled by different options? Or maybe decision making for you has been difficult, or you're wondering, like, how do I know what to say yes to, what to say no to, when, and who should I be saying yes or no to? How do I prioritize the things that I commit to? Do you find yourself overcommitted, like there's way too much on your plate and not enough time to get it done? Today, I'm going to be sharing with you this one simple process that you can do, this practice that will help all your decision making to be easier. But first, my name is Enoch Leffingwell, and with the Army of Youth, we are passionate about helping young people to identify their unique talents and to dedicate them to the Lord's service. And today, we are going to be looking at this one practice that is life transforming, and I want to share this with you. So not long ago, about a year ago, I went through this experience of basically documenting the core values that I have that are unique to me. And this is the one practice that I would recommend, that if the reason why we find decision making so difficult is because we don't have values that, or we are very clear at this is what we stand for and this is what we're not. And when we get the clarity around the things that matter most to you, the things that matter most to me, then it becomes very easy, decision making does, because the opportunities are able to be filtered through what you've already recognized as the most important principles of your life. And I went through this experience as I started to ask myself, what are the principles that have been the greatest impact in my life? What are the principles that matter most to me? What do I value? And I started going through this journey. I started studying the scriptures. I'm like, well, first of all, what does God value? And I began to realize a lot of different things God values. And I was noticing themes. And I looked through my experience, and I encourage you to look through yours. What were the defining moments in my life? What were defining moments in your life? Maybe it was a conversation. Maybe it was a failure that you had that you analyzed and you got new perspective, and that lesson you never repeated again. And through that experience, you deepened this impression of some valuable lesson that you gained. So as I went through this, I began to realize some of the things that I value is, like, one, I value sacrificing. Jesus said, if any man come after me, let him take up his cross and follow me, or he cannot be my disciple, in Luke 14:27. And what I realize is, with this, the cross is that which we find uncomfortable. It's that which is stepping out of our comfort zone. And personally, I value improvement and growth so much. And I realize if it doesn't challenge me, it will never change me. So in order to grow, I need to step out of my comfort zone. Everything that I want is outside of my comfort zone. So I have found that my comfort zone has been one of the greatest limitations of my life, and I want to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. That's what matters to me. And that has become one of the values that I put together in this list. And I would encourage you, identify what are your top 10 values. Make a list of 10 values and see. You can start with a sloppy list of what are all the potential ones. You could visualize the possible values that matter most to you, and then you could prioritize the ones that make the most sense, and then you could commit to 10 and realize when you have these 10 values, then everything can be filtered through what you realize what matters most to you. Jesus said, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Or in other words, that where your treasure, or what you value, you tend to find time for. What you value, you will make time for, and you will prioritize the time for. So when people say, I don't have enough time, what they're really telling me is they don't have priorities, or they don't have values that are clearly defined to them. And once we begin getting very clear on what matters most to us, then we can start filtering opportunities and see what really fits with the calling that God has in my life. As I went through this experience, I began to reflect on my life, and I realized, you know what? Every decision that I've ever made to relocate in the work of God, I started recording videos on my phone in my mother's living room, and I recorded those videos. I got thousands of views, and that was when I was 17 years old. I was there for 2 years after I gave my heart to Christ. But then I got a phone call that was like, hey, why don't you come move into the church and be a Bible worker? And I was like, I didn't have to think about it. I knew, boom. I was there that night. I slept on the concrete floor underneath a table in the church fellowship hall because they didn't have a room prepared for me yet. But I was ready to, I delayed not, made haste to keep God's commandments. The opportunity opened. I didn't have to be paralyzed like, oh no, what am I going to do? What about this? No, I knew where was I going to grow the most. And so I went there. And then I was laboring there for 2 years. And I was a Bible worker. I was one of the elders in training, and I was helping with that church to grow and doing Bible studies in the community with the church. And I grew a lot. I learned a lot. And but there came a point of this, the church grew from like there was like 3 members to about 50 members that were coming a week, that by God's grace through working together. And I found that there's a limit to how much we can grow without the leadership actively prioritizing their time to help follow up with context or lead out in different meetings or prioritize certain things. So I realized that there's a limit to what can happen with the church. And I was urging, and I was visiting some of the elders and deacons and the pastor and just seeing what could we do to grow. And I realized that they didn't really have the same desires that I did to grow. And they kind of like enjoyed coming together like a club or like just the fellowship, and not as much as like that evangelism spirit. So I'm like, wow, what do I do? Then I got this opportunity to go move 2 hours away to another location to start a missionary training school to teach young people how to work for God. And I decided, but these were all where all my contacts were, my family was, my friends, and everybody who I've been laboring for these last 4 years. And now I'm going to leave them to go over there, and I had to weigh and decide. But I realized in hindsight, I went there because that was where I could grow, where I could develop more. And progress to me is so important. Proverbs 4:18 says, the path of the just is as a shining light that shineth more and more to the perfect day. And from Oregon, I was invited to go down to California. And the question was, where am I going to grow the most? And I look, about every 2 years, I move to a different place. And I gain new experiences and new opportunities in the last 8 years being in full-time ministry. But when I look back and I really examine and analyze the past, it was like a large portion, there was other factors, but a large portion was where could I grow the most? Now, growth is one of the 7 basic human needs. That might not be your strongest motivating factor, but I believe it is for me. But having that hindsight helps me to understand when analyzing opportunities and prioritizing different options of what to say yes or no, or commitments to make or not make. Then a question is like, where can I grow? Where can I develop my talents for Christ's service? That's a large reason why the Army of Youth vision is to help young people identify their unique talents and dedicate them and develop them in the Lord's service, because we really care about improvement and development and progress. Because if we're not growing, we're dying. Progress equals happiness. And that's what I realized. So my wish for all is so that you can grow. And this is one of the reasons why we do what we do at the Army of Youth. As I went through and I began to look at what were the other values. So I value sacrificing, stepping out of my comfort zone. I value improvements. I value leadership development. Leadership development has been one of the greatest blessings in my life. And I realized that the limit to any ministry, the limit to any organization, startup, or group, or church, or any family is the level of leadership of each individual. First and foremost, the one who is spearheading the organization, but second, each individual involved. And I realized that the greater that we level up as leaders, the more impact we can have, the more we can reach souls for Christ, to use our influence to lead others to Jesus. So I began to realize this is something I should prioritize my focus on. I should learn about this. I should understand, how could I give others the opportunities I wish I had when I was in their situation. That's how we look at leadership development here at the Army of Youth, is giving others the opportunities we wish we had when we were in their situation. That's what Matthew 7:12 says. Do to others as we would have done to us. So I have been given great opportunities as a youth. more than most people. I've been privileged, and because of that, I'm so grateful. And I want to help you to have even more opportunities than what I had. That's why we're creating these messages, these contents, these videos. And because I value your leadership development and I care about your growth so much, I'm willing to show up. When it comes to recording these videos, I'm going to step out of my comfort zone. Yes, it's uncomfortable talking to the camera, but I care about you. I can see you behind the screen, and I remember the conversations I have with many of you, and I see that you're growing. You're getting clarity that I wish I had when I was in your situation. You're understanding things more than ever before, and I'm like, okay, I need to show up because of you, because I care about you, and I value you and your journey in walking with God. And I wish that I had a friend who could help clarify these things for me. And these are the very lessons that I have found the most impactful, the most helpful, and I want everybody to have the privileges of having these. And so in this process, I would encourage you to find out what are the 10 values that you hold more dear to you. And when you understand these 10 values, they become the theme throughout your opportunities to share, the conversations you give, the counsel you give, the things you listen to, the things you share. And they help you to act as like a filter filtering out opportunities or options or decisions that you have to make. Once you are crystal clear on your identity in Christ, your own unique individuality, and what you value most, then decision making becomes easy. This simple practice, and I call it a practice because it's not something you do overnight. With these values, I didn't figure it out all in one sitting. I kind of got an idea, and I probably started with 4, and I went on and I made decisions based on those 4. Then I realized, you know what, I really value this. So I got 5, and I went on. And as we've gone forward, these values have become the same values of the army of youth and what we incorporate as a whole. And it's based on these values that we attract each other based on who we are. And chances are, if you're watching these, you probably have some similar values as I do, and that's why we get along so well. And I love that because I want to surround myself with people who value the same things. And those I find that do not value the same, they tend to, those friendships tend to get distance and more distance because people like those who are like themselves. And if we do agree, then I'm excited that we get to go to war against young people living an aimless life, because an aimless life is a living death. Thousands are going to Christ's graves every day, and we can do something about it together. We can do so much more together than we ever could apart, and honestly, that excites me. So I'm really glad we get to do this. Now, for you, I would encourage you to find out what are your 10 personal values, your core values. And when you get clarity here, decision-making becomes extremely easy for you to live your calling. And along this process, we have actually put together this Live Your Calling Daily Account Book, which is a daily system for journaling, planning, and getting clarity on who you are in Christ, so that you could be more intentional with your life, so that you could take inventory. This is a biblical system that we mapped out here using the Bible principles, saying like, what are all the things that God said we should pray for, the things that we should be intentional about, intentional with our relationships, intentional with our time, intentional with our prayers, intentional with everything that we can, and have a system in the evening to reflect and to journal on the day and to recognize just with simple questions that the Bible would prompt us to ask ourselves at the end of each day, to examine our life and say, who are you? Who are you really in Christ Jesus? And based on who you are and what you value most, decision-making becomes so easy. This is one of the single greatest tools that I have used to say no to overcommitment and to prioritize my focus in life, and to be able to better understand and act out the values of what matters most to us. So if you want to get your copy of Live Your Calling Daily Account Book, all you have to do is go to thearmyofyouth.com/account book. And that's again, thearmyofyouth.com/account book. And you can get your copy today. We'll ship anywhere in the world. So I would like to know, let me know in the comments, what is something that you think that you value? Or, hey, which of my values do you resonate well with you? Which ones do we share in common? And if you like this video, hit like and share it with other people, because who do you know that's struggling with decisions? Who do you know that could benefit by having clarity on what they value most and help to have a single practice that they can consistently get better at to make things easier? Go let them know. Tag them below. Let them have the opportunities that you're getting here in these daily life videos. Who can you share these with if these have been a blessing for you? Thank you so much for watching. And remember, God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called.